guys, welcome back to another episode of Home Built, and this week we need to start looking at doing something about door trims. All right, welcome back, guys, and those of you watching last week saw I retrimmed the dash, and that seemed to be pretty well received. I am very happy with the result. There are still little bits and pieces I need to tackle. Lots of suggestions for using magnets on the glove box, which is a good one. The only issue I have is that I have the indent. You can sort of see where the latch is supposed to go, and yeah, I don't like that. So if I am going to make it just put a leather tab coming out and use magnets, I need to take it off and fill that hole in because I don't want to see those little indentations. But overall, it is coming together, but we only have 9 weeks left. If you missed that episode last week, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up. And as always, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It does help the channel out. So now, today, we want to start having a look at door trims. So I think first thing is we'll start with the old ones and see what we're working with. All right, so this is the old door trim that was on the car when I got it. I can get replacements of these, but obviously they won't match with the leather interior and stuff like that. So I need to revamp the whole thing, and to be honest, they're a little bit plainer than I would have liked. Now, they came with this armrest on the side, which I don't mind the shape of, but obviously it's not leather, so that will be leather. And one of the things that I didn't like is it came with these sort of, they tried to make the car a bit more modern for the 70s, so they used these sort of, they made up these ugly window winders, and this is the sort of the door latch, whereas the earlier ones, the 1750, have these much prettier window winders and door latches, so that's what I have got for this car because I think they look much nicer. And I can pick and choose the bits I want to use to get the look that I'm after, and I definitely think that's much nicer. Now, yes, I am going to be using a window winder. I have actually got some heavy-duty micro switches that I'm going to be setting up behind the winder and basically just making a simple mechanism so that when you lift it up, it will wind the window up. When you push it down, it'll wind the window down. Very simple, just prettier than some sort of modern switch. It was very hard to find something that was nice and chrome and would match, and I really like that. So I think that's going to look nice in the car, but I don't have time to do that now because we only have 9 weeks. So that can be something I can tackle later. I've got the bits, so I can just do it then. As far as the design goes, I need to come up with something that looks nice. It's not just one big flat piece of the Quoio leather. I'm going to try and design something up now and see if we can make it a little bit nicer. So the first thing is to make a cardboard template up from my original door trim and then see if we can start drawing a design up on that. All right, so I've cut out my template and basically started to lay out my design. So I've got my window winder, door handle, armrest, roughly where they're supposed to go, or at least from standard. And I can't actually find at the moment. There's a little winding butterfly knob that opens up my quarter glass, and I know I ordered them, but I can't find them at the moment. There must be something somewhere, but I can find them later. In any case, I went around, I used my punch to punch all the holes to try and get them in a reasonably accurate spot, or at least where they were on the original door trims. And this is my template. Now, I need to try and design up some sort of patterns to make it feel a bit better than just one big piece of tan leather. All right, so I spent a lot of time marking everything up, positioning everything where it's supposed to be. I actually bolted this armrest onto the door trim where it's supposed to be, sitting everything out where it needs to be, and I have a plan of attack for the door trim. So we have our speaker pod. That was the speaker that I've already mounted in the door. That's exactly where that goes. I'm going to put a strip down the bottom of the carpet. Now, on the original door trim, it just had sort of, it was all the one material, and they just sort of pressed some lines in it and sort of pretty average, and it had this horrible sort of plasticky chrome strip. So I am going to sort of replicate that by putting the carpet there. The other good thing about carpet is if you do get out of the car and your foot scuffs the door, it sort of helps protect it. So I'll have that strip there. It also breaks up the bottom of the door trim. We've got the speaker, we've got the door handle mounted there, we have the window winder mounted there, we have the butterfly knob for the quarter windows there. I'm going to sew a seam down here. Again, sort of matching a bit like the designs they've put into the factory door trim, but I always found these look a bit weird because it doesn't line up in any way with the armrest. The armrest is sort of goes over the top and it's sort of a bit odd. Whereas I've sort of made it fit with the armrest and it can go around nicely. And then above that, this strip, I have taken inspiration from the original Ferrari Daytona door trims, which had something similar like this, and this will tie it into the seats nicely. So I've got to make these inserts up so that it does the job. So I think now we need to transfer this onto some aluminium and start cutting out our basic door skin. So I mark out all my details onto the piece of aluminium, and then I actually use a jigsaw with just a regular wood cutting blade to cut out the aluminium. It works quite well. And then I go through and finish it off with some tin snips. But I have finally, after all these years, ordered myself a nibbler, which should probably make a lot of this work so much easier. Then I go around and tidy up all the edges with the flap disc on the angle grinder, just making it nice and neat, and then start drilling in my fixing holes. All right, so I've made my door trim up. It now all fits quite nicely and sits on there. It's only very thin. It's only 1mm aluminium, which is actually, you know, it's plenty tough enough for the car, and it's not even bolted along the bottom. And I've got my speaker bolted in exactly where it's going to be. The top chrome strip, which I'm going to keep reusing, that goes on nicely. So this part is really good. So now we need to do the same thing for the other side. All right, so I have the second door trim done, and you've probably been wondering why I cut a big hole out of the top of both of the door trims. And I did mention before that I got the inspiration from the Daytonas to do it's going to be hopefully a little bit puffy, and it'll be the tan black lines as an insert that goes into the door trim. Now, to get this to sit exactly the way I want it, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this sit behind the current piece. So what I've gone through and done is I've marked up on my cardboard template. You might be able to see there's another line around, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a piece that I can trim with those lines on it that sits behind, and it actually it goes around and it bolts on with the armrest. And the armrest, the way that this door has been made is basically the armrests bolt on from the back. So there's bolt holes in the back, and then they've got there's sort of like a metal brace, and then there'll be some dress bolts just underneath the door trim that hold it so it's nice and firm, because obviously the last thing you want is the door trim flexing when you're trying to pull the door closed with the armrest. So I've got my panel there, so now I'm going to cut out an extra piece of template, and then I'm going to cut out a couple of extra trim pieces that I will be able to then make my inserts up for.
Thankfully, these pieces were small enough to fit into my guillotine, which makes light work of this thin aluminium.
All right, so I have my armrest on, and it's bolted on my insert, which is now sitting behind. So now I can trim this, and then when I put it on, it will look like and will be sitting behind the rest of the door trim without actually taking up a whole bunch of room on the back. As you can see, it's only 1mm aluminium. It will have a couple of thicknesses of leather on it, so it will space it out a little bit, but not a lot. And that is the design for my insert. So the last thing I need to do before I go away and try and trim these door trims is to actually make sure that they are fixed permanently onto the car, or securely onto the car. And the temporary screws I had in are not the way I want to do it. Originally they did have screws, visible screws all the way around the outside. I don't like that. I like hidden fasteners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same clips that I use for the interior panels on the center console. I'll put them around the edges, but they're not going to do the job for a door trim when you're going to be grabbing hold of it and pulling the door by the door trim. It will pop off. So you need a good solid attachment point, or at least a few good solid attachment points for that style of thing. And it actually normally does have a couple of bolts that go in here, and I'm going to put some pretty countersunk cap heads in there with dress rings, and they'll look quite nice and neat under there, and they'll be the only two visible fasteners, and the rest hopefully I can just do with clips. So let's start making all the clips up, and we'll see how we go about fitting some bolts.
So here you can see I'm spending a bit of time to make the keyhole shapes to slip the clips into the door trim. So I'm just drilling 2 holes and cutting a slot in between with the air saw, and afterwards I go around with a file and just to tidy up any of the burrs. Now I'm transferring the mounting holes onto the door itself, and then going around and drilling the corresponding hole so that the clips will clip in nicely and I have a nice fitted door trim.
All right, so I went around the door and I've actually mounted rib nuts in the center here so I can actually bolt the door trim on, and it has the clips that go all the way around. They're all drilled out, they all fit up, so let's just bolt it on, make sure it fits exactly the way we like it, and we can do the other side. All right, so you would have seen that I went through and cut out the lower carpet strips for both door trims, and I've got them there. And now I've gone and have done a 40mm wide strip of leather that's long enough to go around the whole edge of this, because I'll show you how I'm going to do it. But basically, I've gone through on the back and I've done a 6mm seam allowance because I just want just the edge, and I'm going to go through now sewing on the face of the carpet and sew the leather on, so then I can fold the leather over and tuck it around and eventually glue it onto the door trim. So let's start sewing on the lower strip onto the carpet so that I'm getting ready to move forward. All right, so I sewed my edge on the carpet so that I can stick it onto the door trim and fold it underneath, and I've got a nice sort of trimmed edge all the way around the edge of the carpet. So now I need to start sewing the rest of this cover, which is basically flat, but I do have a seam in the middle that I'm going to put in here to try and make it a little bit nicer. I'm going to do as a French seam, so I'm going to cut this lower section and then this upper section and sew them together and leave a bit of a seam allowance there, and we should be good, fingers crossed. So let's start measuring it up and cutting out the leather bits and sewing it on, and hopefully I don't mess it up. All right, so using the stapler was a technique I used a lot on my previous builds, and I didn't really use it that much on the seats, but it's quite effective to hold everything in line, staple the two parts together, sew it, and then pull the staples out. Makes your life much easier, and I just use it then just to get this sitting nice and flat, and then I sewed obviously the two pieces together, and then put a bit of adhesive on the back of this so I could lay it all down nice and flat. It's just going to make it much easier to go over the front now and put in my French seam. So let's start sewing. All right, I am very happy with that. So I have my double stitching now, if the camera will focus on it. So it looks very nice and neat all the way along, and even sort of the corner came out pretty good. And by the time I actually get it onto the door trims, I can sort of fix all that up, as you've seen with the heat gun and stuff. Really seems to tidy it up. So that is going to look very nice and just gives a bit of interest to the door trim. That's the only reason I put that seam in there, is just to give some decoration to the door trim. So now I think we need to try and line up our lower piece, our carpet piece, and sew them together. And fingers crossed it all works the way it's supposed to and we can move forward. All right, so I have my basic shape of the door trim here. I've got my carpet sewn on the bottom, and everything hopefully is all lined up the way I want it to. So now I'm going to put some foam straight onto the aluminium on the top, and I'm going to leave a strip in the middle without any foam on it so that this seam can sit down into that gap and sort of is an indented seam. That's the plan. So let's start cutting out some strips of foam and see what we can come up with.
So here I'm going through and very carefully sticking the foam on, leaving a gap for the French seam I sewed in the leather cover. And I'm systematically going through and a bit of adhesive and lay a bit down, and a bit more adhesive and lay a bit down, in a process so that I can get everything on nice and tight and try and get everything to fit the way I intended it to. And here it's a matter of spending a lot of time going through and wrapping the corners of all these pieces and making sure I stretch the leather over and get a nice fit all the way around.
That was a lot of work, but they look great, and I have 2 door trims made up and covered. I've got my carpet strip at the bottom. I still have to obviously trim the armrests, and I've got to do these inserts, but I am definitely out of time, so I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, the Ferrari F1 2000 was, as you can guess, the Formula One car that Ferrari built for the Formula One 2000 season. This was an evolution of the previous year's F399, now using a wider 90-degree V10 over the previous 75-degree engine. This car proved to be a little harder on its tyres, but more reliable than its slightly faster main rival McLaren. Michael Schumacher, who was back from his broken leg, which had precluded him from the second half of the last season, proved to have a very dominant season and won his 3rd World Drivers' title and Ferrari's first in 21 years. This proved to be the start of Ferrari's absolute dominance in Formula One, with Michael Schumacher winning back-to-back 5 drivers' titles, setting a new record of 7 drivers' titles in total, which has only been matched by Lewis Hamilton in 2020. This era was also the beginning of the end for tobacco sponsorship in Formula One. So 2001 saw the absolute ban of tobacco sponsorship in most sports. However, Formula One managed to hold out until 2006. This was a huge blow for the Formula One teams, including Ferrari, who had had Marlboro as one of their main sponsors since 1973. Ferrari has, however, continued to find creative ways to promote Philip Morris, which of course owns Marlboro, including the barcode and Mission Winnow sponsorships since.
All right, I am very happy with my door trims. I think they're just, it's how I was picturing it. I did look at doing more 3D designs, which people do with MDF and stuff like that, but I don't want the weight. I don't want to add this heap of bulk. This makes for quite a light door trim. It's also going to last a lot longer than the sort of the masonite sort of timber ones that people often use that sort of end up warping and turning horrible. This will last longer than the leather, so it should be a nice finish.
Looks good. I always get a bit nervous when Jeff flails around with his arms because facial awareness. Like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think of the build, and also help him out on Patreon. Helps the builds, and
yes, we'll see you next week.
See you soon.
8 weeks left.
Woohoo!
All right, see you guys.
Over the previous 75-degree engine.
Yes.
Yes. 3rd World Drivers' title and Ferrari's 21st.
The first in 21 years.
Damn it! Damn it! Drivers' titles back-to-back, making a total of 4 World Drivers' titles. Okay.
Just
Stop
no,
it! No,
do it as
no.
5. Don't do it as that. Do it as 5. Total.
Setting a new record, which has only been matched by
Of 7.
Michael Schumacher winning 5 drivers there. 2001 saw the absolute ban of tobacco.
Yes.
That was good, right? Yes, that was
Yes.
very good.